Kellen Moore needs to unleash the full force of Saquon Barkley for his revenge game against the Giants. How can he do that? I got all that and more coming up on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's a Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase joining you riding solo. Gino will be back tomorrow with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants to get you ready for Locked On Eagles, Locked On Giants crossover Thursday. Eagles-Giants, a Sunday kickoff. The Eagles have 5 1 o'clock games in a row. Not really complaining about that. I digress. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Eagles-Giants, of course, the biggest storyline of this game is the Saquon Barkley revenge game. We all watched Hard Knocks. We saw them going back and forth with whether New York should pay Saquon. Should they let him go? How Daniel Jones, seeing if he can sink or swim as the franchise quarterback, was a big motivation for letting Saquon go in the open market. But seeing their owner really hold back and have reservations about letting the face of their franchise leave because he's the most popular player. And he was nervous that Saquon was going to sign in Philadelphia. And I quote, "I'm going to be sick if he signs with Philly." That's what Joe Mara said. It was an interesting story to watch Saquon, New York, and then eventually join Philadelphia. And look, even though I think personally both sides were right, the Eagles were correct in their mindset of why they targeted Saquon, and I do think the Giants were correct as well as to why they let him walk. I think they're a rebuilding football team that's not in a win-now window. They need to see if Daniel Jones can be the reason you win football games. Can the offense revolve around your quarterback that you paid, not your running back? I think it was a smart idea for the Giants to let Saquon walk. So although it's not like a Deshaun Jackson returns to Philly type of revenge game where Chip Kelly makes up the story to get rid of Deshaun after a career season, at the same time, it is still a revenge game, especially for Saquon. And for the other side, Joe Mara does not want to watch Saquon beat his football team. Again, no matter what the circumstance was, you do not want the former face of your team that joins a division rival especially to walk into your building and just obliterate you, especially when the owner wanted him back. I mean, just look at A.J. Brown's revenge game against the Tennessee Titans in 2022. It literally, the next day, like that was a revenge game in its purest form. I've never seen a revenge game literally cost the GM or whoever made the decision to let that player go. I've never seen that game cost somebody their job. But that's what happened in 2022. A.J. Brown obliterated Tennessee in that blowout, and it literally got the Titans GM fired a day later. I don't think that's going to happen with the New York Giants. I don't think Mara's going to come for heads if Saquon Barkley has a massive game. But because the owner did want Saquon back, if Barkley just dominates New York and Daniel Jones looks really bad, then he's not going to be happy. And it might warm up the seat a little bit for Brian Daboll, for their entire front office. It's going to be a fun game. I love revenge games. The Eagles are normally very good in them, whether it's the player trying to get revenge or the team. Look at 2022 when they beat Carson Wentz. They beat Zach Ertz. They beat Deuce Staley. I mean, most of these games, A.J. Brown got revenge against Tennessee. For the most part, it works out for Philly in these matchups, and I'm feeling pretty good about this game as well, and a lot of it has to do with Saquon. I mean, he has been the MVP for the Eagles offense so far this year. I mean, look at his stats. 574 scrimmage yards through 5 games, averaging over 100 yards a game from scrimmage, 5 total touchdowns, 4 rushing, 1 receiving. Also leads the NFL, leads all running backs in explosive plays of 20-plus yards on the ground with 4. I mean, Saquon, without Saquon, what? You have 1 win right now? I mean, he has been everything the Eagles wanted and more, and completely justifies Howie Roseman breaking his trend of not investing a lot of money or top draft picks in the running back position. And I agree with that philosophy. Most running backs you should not pay $12+ million, 3+ year contracts. But Saquon isn't just a running back. He's an offensive weapon. He's a game changer, somebody you can win because of. And I'm not saying any team should pay that guy regardless. Like New York, I think, was right to let Saquon go. But for a team like Philadelphia that is in a win now kind of mode and had the flexibility to pay him, I think it was the right move, and we're seeing that on the football field. But again, as I said, the reason it was worth it is because he's an offensive weapon, not just a running back. But what I'm frustrated by, with as good as Saquon Barkley is this year, they're not really using him like an offensive weapon. They're using him more just like a traditional workhorse running back. They're using him like they used Miles Sanders in 2022. They're using him like they used DeAndre Swift in 2023, where, I mean, as you saw on the graphic for our video viewers on our YouTube channel, all of his explosive plays have pretty much come from the ground outside of that one receiving touchdown on the wheel route against Green Bay in the season opener. I will say, like, to fully maximize Saquon for the rest of the year and against the Giants, I want to see Kellen Moore get back to using him on wheel routes, try to use him in motion, get him lined up in the slot against a linebacker one-on-one, get him over the middle of the field, use him in the screen game, use him more on third downs. I'm so sick of seeing number 14 on the field in obvious passing situations. As good as Saquon Barkley has been this year, there's another level that they can tap into, and they're just really not using him in the creative way that I would have liked. And maybe that was more difficult to do when defenses were honing in on him, focusing on him because A.J. Brown was out. Devontae Smith missed a game. Now Dallas Goedert is injured. But I would love to see, especially for his revenge game against the Giants, like, let's start using Saquon in some more creative ways to fully justify that contract. I don't know. That's the way I see it. Saquon's been incredible this year, but I think we're not even fully utilizing. It's like Thanos with the gauntlet, and we're using 4 of the however many Infinity Stones there are, 4 of 6. As a Marvel nerd, I'm ashamed of myself for not knowing how many stones are on the gauntlet. But you get my analogy. That's such a Geno Camilleri analogy, by the way. Saquon, I think there's more ways you can use him. Like, I want to see him lined up as a receiver more. Get him in space. Get him lined up on linebackers. Don't just use him as a traditional running back. I hope they do that for the game against the Giants, and it would be so cool to see him dominate his former team. Like, I love revenge games, especially when it's within the division. Like, you don't get this a whole lot, especially when it was a former face of the franchise, a number 2 overall pick that the owner was sick to his stomach to see leave for Philadelphia. It's going to be it's a fun storyline for sure, and I love that the first game is Saquon heading back to the Meadowlands as opposed to the Giants coming to the Link. It's not just for him, though. I love the quote from Mekhi Becton, who's not playing the Jets this week, but Becton this week said he hates that he's got to go back to MetLife. He called it a dump of a stadium. And so Becton's not looking forward to going back to that stadium either. So there's a lot of fun storylines for Eagles-Giants, and it's an important game. The Eagles could get to 4-2 and really start to build. And in an NFC that's loaded right now with good teams. I mean, the Eagles right now are, the 10 seed on the outside looking in? Like, Chicago's at 4. The entire NFC North's over 500. Washington's 4-2. The NFC's good. They need this win. They got to keep stacking, and they can't have that inconsistency in a conference that I think is a lot deeper than maybe people thought this conference was in the offseason. All right, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I mentioned Kellen Moore and how I want him to be more creative with Saquon Barkley. But overall, I want him to do some different things with Jalen Hurts and the entire offense as a whole as well. What can he do in that specific discussion? I'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, we are sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. And guys, we're also sponsored today by Prize Picks. I love playing on Prize Picks. I've been using it all year. It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks so you can take, let's say, Saquon Barkley to have over 75.5 yards against his former team, the New York Giants, on Sunday. Or let's take the over on Devontae Smith with 83.5 receiving yards in his second game back from injury. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And if you sign up today, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select players' projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure you check out tomorrow's show as well, Crossover Thursday with Gino Camilleri and Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. Eagles Giants this Sunday, a 1 o'clock kickoff. The Saquon Barkley revenge game. Want to see Kellen Moore, use him more as a receiver, pre-snap motion, get him lined up in the slot, the screen game. Can we bring back the wheel route? You can't just tease me and, I don't even want to say the word. Never mind. Saquon Barkley, you give me one beautiful wheel route week 1 in Brazil. It's a touchdown, a toe tap along the left sideline. Saquon Barkley mosses a safety to score his first touchdown as an Eagle. And then you just never run the play again. Like, that is just such a tease. It's absolutely unfair. And I hope they get back to that. They need to be more creative with Barkley. He's been so good this year, but they haven't even reached his ceiling and used his full abilities. I also think I want to see Kellen Moore use Jalen Hurts a little bit differently. And obviously with Jalen and his rushing threat, I think he's more comfortable throwing outside the numbers. You're always going to want to run him the majority of the time in the shotgun, using RPOs, again, using the sidelines, taking vertical shots. Like, that's what Jalen likes to do. And 3 coordinators now, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kellen Moore, they've all kind of used Jalen in the same way. And one thing they don't do a lot is utilize the middle of the football field. The Eagles this year are 31st when it comes to middle of the field target rate. So only one team throws fewer over the middle, fewer times than the Eagles. And I think that's a problem. And some people are going to say, well, that's Nick Sirianni's offense, 3 coordinators, but Nick always puts his hands on this. I'm not so sure. I think they know Jalen doesn't love throwing over the middle. Coordinators know it. And I think personally it's good to build your system around what a player is good at, what he's comfortable with, what he does best right now to fully maximize him. But at the same time, if you want Jalen to grow into the complete quarterback that he can be, and we've seen him have success throwing over the middle of the field, 2022, there's been times the last 2 years as well. Like, we know he can make layer throws, anticipation throws. Now, maybe it's not as consistent as other quarterbacks, but maybe that's because we're not pushing him hard enough in that way. Maybe coordinators are using him too much in by doing what he's good at now, but not pushing him to evolve. Like, they need him. They need to force him to throw over the middle more, add more emphasis on it by calling plays with shots over the middle to A.J. Brown, to Devontae Smith, to Dallas Goedert. Like, we've seen Jalen do it before, but, I mean, look at his passing chart from the game against Cleveland. I mean, he had, one completion over the middle that was beyond 10 yards? Like, you got to use that part of the field a whole lot more. And yeah, are things tighter over the middle? Absolutely. Are you going to have to make more anticipation, tight window throws? For sure. Can it get your players hit at times? Yes. Do you have to be more accurate? Absolutely. But you're paying Jalen Hurts over $200 million, and you're just ignoring the majority of the field? Like, that's not good. You need to. It's incredible and impressive that they're still as good as they are on offense at times. Despite that, I mean, the Eagles this year lead the league in 40-plus yard plays. from Saquon, Devontae, Goddard, AJ. But they need to use the middle of the field more. And I think Kellen Moore needs to push Jalen in that way. And just other ways to utilize different skill sets and to press defenses more. Keep them honest. Like, don't be so predictable. That was such an issue for the Eagles last year. Like, how about more under center plays? More play action. I'm not saying the offense needs to be built around a more traditional style of under center, play action, throwing over the middle. Again, Jalen likes to throw it outside the numbers. He likes to take deep shots. You want to use him in RPOs and, design run plays, and that's going to work mostly through shotgun. But again, you have to have variety so a defense doesn't know what's coming. Right now, you're 25th in play action rate. You're 31st in plays taken under center. That's not a Kellen Moore offense. Like, Kellen Moore utilizes those parts of his scheme as well a lot more with other teams than he is in Philly. And again, I like when a coach says, here's what my players do well. I'm going to apply my scheme to those strengths. Like, you guys hear me talk about that all the time on the show. I hate when a coach says, this is my scheme. You're going to have to adjust to it. But at the same time, if you want to be multiple, if you want to be a complete unit, if you want Jalen Hurts to be a quarterback that defenses have to be scared of everything that he can do, and every part, any kind of play can be made by this quarterback, you have to help him grow in his weaknesses by working on it, by getting reps on the football field. Use the middle of the field so the defense, then they're like, we have no idea what's coming. So I want them to use the middle of the field more. I want more play action. I saw some of that against Cleveland, and I think it worked. I want them to be under center. Again, Jalen's never going to be a under center, 7-step drop back quarterback, but you got to have that element if you're going to be a franchise quarterback. You can't be a one-trick pony. That is why last year, eventually the talent could only carry you so far. So, yeah, maybe part of it is Nick Sirianni's influence, but I don't know. Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kellen Moore, they're all running. Outside of pre-snap motion, there's not much different about this Kellen Moore offense than what we've seen from Steichen and Brian Johnson. And I don't want to just blame Nick Sirianni for that. I think these coordinators see what Jalen does well, what he's comfortable with, maybe what he wants, and that's what they use. But again, that passing chart, like, come on. We got to use that middle of the field more. One frustrating thing, though, is it's going to be tougher to use the middle of the field moving forward, at least for this game against the Giants, because you're not going to have Dallas Goedert. He did not practice today with that hamstring injury that kept him out for 3 quarters against Cleveland. He might be out longer than this game, and that's frustrating. Dallas Goedert looked like he was finally back to peak form of 2021, first half of the 2022 season, a dominant game against New Orleans. He was leading the league in receiving yards for tight ends at one point, and then he just gets hurt again. Like, this is the Dallas Goedert story. He can't stay healthy, and it's extremely frustrating. And that's going to make it harder to throw over the middle of the field. But you still have Saquon Barkley. You've got Jahan Dotson in the slot, Devontae Smith in the slot. A.J. Brown's the most physical receiver in football. There's no excuse to not be using that area of the field. So I hope Kellen Moore in that way can switch things up. You got to get Jalen to be able to do that, or he's a one-trick pony. And that's not a quarterback worth $200 million, even as good as he is in those other areas. All right, guys, coming up next, who are the game wreckers for the New York Giants the Eagles need to stop to get to 4-2? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. The Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook that I bet on literally every single day. It's FanDuel. On top of all the bets that you can make, if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same FanDuel page where you place your bets. And if you bet with us at LOE3, you take A.J. Brown, the over on his receiving totals, maybe Jalen Hurts, over 1.5 passing touchdowns, and anytime sack from Josh Sweat. These are all of my bets that I won on Sunday against Cleveland through FanDuel. You're actually going to get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. All you got to do is place $5. And although I won big on Friday or on Sunday from my Friday bets for Eagles-Browns, even if you don't win, you place just $5, win or lose, you're going to get $200 back in bonus bets through FanDuel guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so the Eagles are heading into the Meadowlands on Sunday to take on the New York Giants at 1 o'clock, an opportunity to get to 4-2 and get back into first place in the NFC East. How do they do it? Again, I think the Eagles are a much better football team than New York. 2-4 the Giants are, but I will say they've got some pretty good players on both sides. I'm not scared of Daniel Jones, but there are some players they need to keep an eye out for, especially when you look at some of the matchups. Due to Eagles injuries, there maybe could be some mismatches that New York could take advantage of. Jordan Mailata did not practice today with that hamstring injury. Nick Sirianni said a couple days ago in his press conference that Jordan might be out for a few weeks, so looks like it's probably going to be Fred Johnson at left tackle. So that's going to create some interesting matchups against a good Giants pass rush. Also, you look at Malik Nabers. He did practice for the Giants. Could be a big battle with Quinyon Mitchell. The Giants have some players. You got it. This is a pretty good roster. If they get a quarterback next year in the draft, I don't think New York's far away from competing with the Eagles and the rest of these teams in the NFC East. So here are my 4 game wreckers the Eagles have to stop. Number 1, defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence was what we wanted Jordan Davis to be. That's who we said Jordan's ceiling was. A player at first that seemed like a 2-down, 1-tech nose tackle type, but he has all the athleticism and upside to become more than that, to become a pass rusher. Davis hasn't taken that step, but Dexter Lawrence absolutely has. He has 7 sacks already this year. He leads the league in sacks on the interior. Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, Landon Dickerson, wherever Lawrence is lining up, they've got their work cut out for him for sure. And they've got guys on the outside too. My number 2 guy here to watch is a player that Gino and I love, as you guys know, Brian Burns. And if he's lined up on the Eagles' left side of the offensive line, he's going to be going up against Fred Johnson. And if it's not Brian Burns, they've got Kayvon Thibodeau. They also have Azeez Ojulari, who had 2 sacks on Sunday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's the Giants' bread and butter. That's the strength of this football team. It's their front 4. Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Ojulari. You've got Thibodeau as well. That's a good pass rush. And the Eagles are a little banged up right now on the offensive line. Luckily, they did get Lane Johnson back last week. Number 3 is Malik Nabers. The Giants are optimistic Nabers will play in this game. He did return to practice today after missing that game against the Bengals. My number 4 game wrecker is another receiver. It's Wan'Dale Robinson. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they got their work cut out for them with Nabers and Robinson. Darius Slay was a limited participant in practice today. Quinyon versus Nabers, that's going to be a fun matchup. Potentially the best rookie receiver of this class against the best rookie corner of this class. And Quinyon is having a year. I think right now he should be the defensive rookie of the year favorite. Look at these numbers. 8 forced incompletions. This year is tied for 3rd in the entire NFL. His forced incompletion rate of 30% is 1st in the league. His 48.3 passer rating allowed, it's the 2nd lowest rating that a rookie has allowed through his first 5 games since 2018. The only guy that had a better start to his career in that way was Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears. Quinyon Mitchell versus Malik Nabers. I mean, this is going to be a great matchup. And Quinyon, the most impressive part about his hot start is they're playing good receivers. I mean, he had Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs to take care of week 1, Dontavius Wicks. That's a good Packers receiving core. Then he's got Drake London and Darnell Mooney in Atlanta. Then he's got Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed in New Orleans. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay. Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy in Cleveland. And Quinyon is just locking down everybody. But Malik Nabers, he is as advertised. I think he's better than Marvin Harrison right now. I mean, he looks like the best receiver of the 2024 class. And Wan'Dale Robinson, why I put him there over any other Giant is because of his style of play. Like, this is an explosive, shifty, undersized slot receiver. And Cooper DeJean is coming off an incredible starting debut against Cleveland. But while DeJean does have that long, straight line speed, he's definitely not as twitchy as a Wan'Dale Robinson. I think this is the tougher matchup that DeJean will face based on the style of receiver he'll go up against in the slot. I'm curious what they do with this matchup. DeJean played so well, though, last week that you're not moving him from this spot. Wan'Dale Robinson versus Cooper DeJean, that's going to be a good matchup as well. Quinyon Mitchell against Malik Nabers. Fred Johnson against Brian Burns. Dexter Lawrence against Cam Jurgens and Mekhi Becton and Landon Dickerson. A lot of fun matchups up front on both sides of the ball. So those are the 4 guys I would say the Eagles really have to contain to get this win. All right, guys, we'll have more on this matchup for you tomorrow. Crossover Thursday. Gino's going to take over this one with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. We've got LOE3 and more for you on a Friday edition of the show as well. And then it's game time on Sunday, Eagles-Giants at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Lou DiBiase signing off as always. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go, Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.